"I consider this disloyal, Addison," Victoria said, her voice like ice, each word cutting through the quiet hum of her expansive, meticulously organized office. She stared at me from behind her imposing mahogany desk, its polished surface reflecting the morning light and the carefully curated trophies of her success. "After everything Harbor Point Communications has done for you. 6 years of investment, of opportunity." I sat across from her, my hands clutching the worn leather of my purse, so tightly my knuckles turned white. I focused on the intricate stitching. Anything to stop the tremor that threatened to betray the chaos swirling inside me. The initial shock of being summoned to her inner sanctum, at precisely 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, had long since worn off, replaced by a dense, unyielding knot of dread in the pit of my stomach. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with unspoken accusations and the acrid scent of Victoria's expensive perfume. This wasn't a performance review. This was an execution. "Victoria, I started, my voice a strangled whisper, but she cut me off with a dismissive wave of her hand. Her perfectly manicured nail, a pristine shade of classic red, tapped rhythmically on a printed email spread open before her, an almost theatrical gesture. "Don't bother denying it, Addison," she stated, her gaze unwavering, cold as the frost on a winter window. "I have irrefutable confirmation you interviewed with North Bay Solutions last Thursday. You took a half-day for a dental appointment, I believe." A slight, cruel smile touched the corner of her lips, a flicker of triumph in her steely blue eyes. "My name is Addison Walker. I'm 31 years old, and for the past 6 years, I had poured every ounce of my professional dedication, my creativity, and my boundless energy into Harbor Point Communications, right here in Spokane, Washington. In those 6 years, I hadn't merely performed my job, I had excelled. I had tripled my client portfolio, converting fledgling accounts into flourishing partnerships. I had personally spearheaded campaigns that brought in millions in revenue, not just for the company, but often for clients others had deemed too difficult or too small. I had earned, through sheer hard work and consistent results, the respect and trust of every major account in our roster. I had built a reputation for meticulous planning, innovative solutions, and unwavering client advocacy. But apparently, in Victoria's eyes, none of that mattered now. Only the perceived breach of an unwritten code of absolute, blind loyalty. "Security will meet you at your desk," Victoria continued, her voice devoid of any warmth, any empathy. It was merely a vehicle for delivering cold, clinical instructions. "You may collect your personal belongings, but your building access is revoked immediately." She paused, then, with a subtle flick of her wrist, slid my company ID card across the polished surface of her desk, a thin plastic rectangle that suddenly felt like a heavy, useless stone. "I've already disabled your email access. Your severance package details will be mailed to you." The injustice of it burned in my chest, a hot, bitter ember. 3 years. 3 consecutive years I had walked into this very office, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation, armed with meticulously prepared presentations. These weren't just flimsy requests, they were comprehensive documents, detailing my undeniable achievements, compelling market-rate salary comparisons, for someone with my experience and results, and well-reasoned arguments for a well-deserved, long overdue raise. And for 3 years, I had received the same rote, dismissive answers. "It's just not in the budget this year, Addison," or "we need to tighten our belts a little longer." All while Victoria, in quarterly meetings, proudly announced record profits and celebrated the company's financial triumphs. Her new luxury SUV in the employee parking lot served as a constant, tangible reminder of where those tightened belts truly resided. I took a deep, steadying breath, allowing the raw anger to solidify into a quiet resolve. I pushed back my chair and stood up, straightening the lapels of my blazer, a small act of defiance. My posture was erect, my gaze level. "I understand," I said, the words surprisingly steady, echoing in the otherwise silent room. Victoria looked almost disappointed by my calm, measured response. Perhaps she had anticipated tears, a desperate plea for a second chance, a dramatic scene she could then magnify and control. Instead, I extended my hand across the desk, a gesture of professional courtesy, a final, dignified farewell. "I wish you and Harbor Point continued success," I stated, my voice holding firm, despite the emotional turmoil churning within me. She hesitated, a flicker of genuine confusion crossing her usually unreadable face, before briefly, almost tentatively, shaking my hand. Her touch was fleeting, as if she feared contamination. It was clear my composure had caught her off guard. As I walked back to my cubicle, the familiar fluorescent hum of the office seemed to amplify the awkward silence. A security guard, a burly man named Frank, whom I'd always exchanged pleasantries with in the mornings, hovered uncomfortably by my desk, his presence a stark, humiliating symbol of my sudden outcast status. Colleagues, many of whom I considered friends, shot concerned, sympathetic glances my way. Some offered small reassuring nods. I met their gaze, offering a small reassuring smile in return. No drama, no scenes. Just dignity. Just a quiet dismantling of 6 years of my life. I packed my framed family photos, the small collection of thriving desk plants I'd nurtured over the years, and a few cherished trinkets into a standard cardboard box. It felt strangely liberating, surprisingly calm. Getting out of those glass doors for the last time, the warm April sunshine washing over my face, I realized something profoundly important. Victoria thought she was punishing me. She couldn't have been more wrong. The humiliation of the morning was already fading, replaced by a nascent sense of freedom. As I carefully placed the single cardboard box into the trunk of my car, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from David Klein, the highly respected, notoriously discerning CEO of North Bay Solutions. "Can we move our final discussion to today, 2 p.m.? A genuine, unbidden smile spread across my face. Victoria had absolutely no idea what was coming. It's funny," I mused as I drove home from Harbor Point, the cardboard box of my professional life secure in my trunk. How 6 years of dedication, growth, and countless hours of effort could fit into a single, humble container. The road stretched out before me, a familiar route that suddenly felt imbued with an unfamiliar sense of possibility. I began to reflect on everything that had led to this precipitous, yet oddly exhilarating, moment. I had joined Harbor Point Communications fresh out of graduate school, armed with a marketing degree from Washington State University, and an eager, almost naive determination to make my mark. I started at the very bottom, an entry-level position that involved making endless coffee runs and meticulously organizing meeting notes. It was hardly glamorous, but I approached it with an unyielding work ethic. I stayed late, volunteered for the difficult projects nobody else wanted, and, most importantly, I began building genuine relationships with clients, many of whom others had long since written off as too demanding, too niche, or simply not worth the effort. Within 2 short years, I had proven my worth, taking on and excelling with our mid-tier accounts. By year 4, I had earned enough trust and demonstrated enough competence to be entrusted with North Bay Solutions, our single largest client. Their business alone was worth nearly 30% of Harbor Point's annual revenue, a fact that underscored their strategic importance to the company's bottom line. David Klein, North Bay's CEO, specifically requested me as their account manager after I had stepped in during a significant crisis. Their previous representative, a seemingly capable but ultimately disengaged senior manager, had inexplicably dropped the ball on a critical, time-sensitive campaign. I worked around the clock, untangling the mess, rebuilding client trust, and ultimately salvaging the campaign and the relationship. "You're the only one who seems to understand what we need before we even ask," David had told me then, his words a profound validation. From that moment on, the relationship between our two companies didn't just stabilize, it flourished. North Bay extended their contract, doubled their marketing budget with us, and often referred new business our way. Victoria had been unequivocally pleased then. This is the kind of initiative and results we value. Addison. She had effused during a quarterly review, her smile wide and seemingly genuine. Though, as I would soon learn, that value never quite translated into tangible compensation. My very first request for a raise came shortly after that success with North Bay. I arrived at her office, armed with meticulously compiled performance metrics, impressive revenue numbers, and a clear, concise justification for increased compensation. The data spoke for itself. It's just not in the budget this year. Addison. Victoria had explained, her voice softening slightly, a perfectly rehearsed look of regret clouding her features. But your contribution is certainly noted. We appreciate your loyalty. I accepted it then, albeit with a growing sense of disappointment. The economy was still a bit uncertain, and I was still diligently building my portfolio. I told myself it was simply bad timing. But the following year, after bringing in 3 new major clients, others had struggled to land, and receiving a prestigious industry award for a groundbreaking digital campaign I had conceptualized and executed, the same frustrating answer came. Next year will be better, I promise. She had chirped, a forced optimism in her tone. We just need to tighten our belts a little longer, be fiscally prudent. Meanwhile, Victoria continued to drive to work in a brand new, top-of-the-line luxury SUV, and the company leased an additional floor in our building for expansion. Still, I remained loyal, stubbornly clinging to the belief that dedication, consistent overperformance, and unwavering commitment would eventually be recognized and rewarded. The third denial, the one that finally broke something fundamental within me, came just 6 months ago. It was right after I had successfully negotiated a significant 40% increase in North Bay's annual contract value, securing their commitment for another 3 years. Your performance is truly exceptional, Addison, Victoria had said, almost sounding sincere. But we're investing heavily in infrastructure this year. Perhaps we can revisit this conversation in the summer. That was the moment. The well of my patience ran dry. That night, for the first time in 6 years, I updated my resume. It wasn't out of anger or a petty desire for revenge. It was born of a profound, undeniable sense of self-respect. I was worth more than constant promises and perpetual denial. I just never expected Victoria would discover my confidential job search before I was ready to give my notice, to leave on my own terms. Sick at home. The familiar comfort of my apartment felt foreign, almost alien. I placed the cardboard box on my kitchen counter and just stared at it, the humble container holding the tangible remnants of half a decade of my life. The reality of what had just happened finally hit me. Not in a wave, but as a crushing, undeniable weight. I wasn't just between meetings or taking a day off. I was unemployed. The realization pressed against my chest, momentarily making it difficult to breathe. A cold, empty ache blooming where hope used to reside. My phone rang, its vibrant screen displaying my best friend, Olivia's name. I answered on the second ring, knowing why she was calling. I just heard, she said, her voice laced with concern and a barely suppressed anger. Thomas texted me. Are you okay? Seriously, Addison, what happened? Thomas was Harbor Point's IT specialist and Olivia's boyfriend. News, it seemed, traveled with the speed of light through the office grapevine. I'm processing, I replied honestly, sinking onto a kitchen stool, the cool laminate providing little comfort. It happened so quickly. 1 minute I was prepping for a client call, the next I was being escorted out by security. It's completely unfair. Olivia fumed, her voice rising with indignation. A trait I admired in her. Everyone knows you're the only reason North Bay has stayed with Harbor Point this long. Victoria's just intimidated. Addison. She's always been intimidated because you're better at the job than she ever was. more connected to the clients, more innovative. There was, I had to admit, a painful kernel of truth to that. Olivia herself had been the company's star account executive before she moved into a management role. A move many of us suspected she regretted. She missed the direct client relationships, the hands-on work, the tangible recognition of closing a deal. Often, she'd insert herself unnecessarily into my meetings with North Bay, ostensibly to mentor, but more often, it felt like she was trying to reclaim some of her old glory. The worst part is how she did it, I said, a fresh flash of anger sparking within me. Like I'd committed some kind of corporate treason, by simply looking for other opportunities, after being denied advancement and appropriate compensation for 3 years straight, as if my loyalty was a given, an endless, unreciprocated offering. It's her loss, Addison. Olivia replied firmly, her voice unwavering. And honestly, maybe it's for the best. You've been undervalued there for years. Your talents were being stifled, your potential unfulfilled. She was right, of course. I'd stayed at Harbor Point primarily out of loyalty to my clients and my colleagues, the relationships I'd painstakingly built. Not because it was the best choice for my career or my financial well-being, but getting fired like this, escorted out by security, like a common criminal, that still stung deeply, leaving a raw, aching wound. My phone beeped again, signaling an incoming call. My heart gave a sudden, hopeful lurch when I saw the name displayed, David Klein. Olivia, I need to take this. It's North Bay.
Go, take it.
Call me after, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper before she hung up. I took a deep, fortifying breath, letting the anger and humiliation dissipate, focusing instead on the opportunity that was suddenly, unexpectedly, materializing. I answered the call, my voice as professional and composed as I could make it. Addison Walker. Addison. I just heard what happened at Harbor Point, David said, skipping all pleasantries, his voice conveying a mix of concern and urgency. Are you available to come in today? I'd like to accelerate our conversation. Perhaps at 2 p.m. My heart raced, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. The universe, it seemed, was providing a swift, undeniable form of cosmic intervention. Yes, David? I replied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I can be there at 2 p.m., as you suggested. Excellent. And Addison, he added, his tone softening slightly, don't worry about what happened this morning. Sometimes these things have a way of working out for the best. See you then. After hanging up, I walked slowly to the kitchen window, staring at my reflection in the glass. The woman looking back at me wasn't defeated. She was being set free. The immediate panic had subsided, replaced by a profound sense of clarity. The humiliation of the morning had been a brutal, unexpected push, a necessary catalyst. It had shown me, in no uncertain terms, that I had given Harbor Point my unwavering loyalty, my boundless creativity, and countless unpaid overtime hours. In return, I had been systematically undervalued, dismissed, and ultimately unceremoniously discarded. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never again give my best to people who couldn't see my worth, who didn't recognize value until it walked out the door. It was time to step into my power, to chart a new course defined by self-respect and ambition, not by unfulfilled promises and stagnant potential. I showered, washing away the lingering residue of humiliation, and changed into my best suit, a crisp navy, blue power suit, I usually reserved for pitching new, high-stakes clients. As I applied my makeup, my movements precise and deliberate, I felt a strange, quiet calm settle over me. Victoria thought she had punished me by firing me so abruptly, so publicly. But perhaps, just perhaps, she had done me the greatest favor of my professional life. Authorises, the North Bay Solutions headquarters, occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming glass building that pierced the Spokane skyline, a beacon of modern enterprise in the bustling downtown core. Unlike Harbor Point's dated, somewhat claustrophobic office, with its beige walls, aging furniture, and endless rows of identical cubicles, North Bay embraced a vibrant, cutting-edge design. It boasted open spaces, collaborative pods equipped with interactive screens, and entire walls of windows showcasing breathtaking panoramic views of the city below and the majestic mountains beyond. Every detail, from the minimalist art to the strategically placed green plants, spoke of innovation, transparency, and a forward-thinking culture. As I rode the elevator to the 30th floor, the gentle ascent mirrored the upward trajectory of my emotions. I mentally rehearsed what I would say in my interview, crafting responses that would explain my sudden availability without betraying any bitterness about Harbor Point. Professionalism was paramount, even when discussing the most uncomfortable and unfair of situations. My focus would be on my capabilities, my track record, and my vision for future success, not on past grievances. The elevator doors glided open silently, revealing David Klein himself waiting in the reception area, a warm, welcoming smile on his face. "Addison," he greeted me, his voice resonant, extending his hand in a firm, confident handshake. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I truly appreciate your flexibility." David was in his early 50s, with distinguished salt and pepper hair, and an approachable demeanor that belied his sharp intellect. He had a formidable reputation in the industry for being both brilliant and fair, qualities I had come to appreciate deeply during our 3 years of working together. His handshake was solid, his gaze direct and empathetic. "I appreciate the flexibility, David," I replied, meeting his gaze evenly. "It's certainly been an unexpected day. Let's talk in my office," he said, gesturing down a bright, open corridor, leading me through the bustling workspace. Several North Bay employees whom I knew from our extensive account work looked up from their screens, offering smiles, waves, or friendly nods as we passed. It was a stark contrast to the strained silence and furtive glances at Harbor Point, David's corner office. While spacious and bright, was remarkably modest compared to Victoria's ostentatious showpiece. It felt infinitely more welcoming, with comfortable seating arranged for conversation and collaboration, rather than designed to intimidate or assert dominance. "Coffee," he offered, gesturing to a sleek, modern machine. "Please make yourself at home." Once we were settled, each with a steaming mug of excellent coffee, David got straight to the point, his directness a refreshing change from the veiled pronouncements I was used to. "I received a call from Victoria Sanders this morning," he began, his expression serious. "She informed me that you would no longer be handling the North Bay account, and that she would personally oversee our business until a replacement was assigned. She also, rather pointedly, suggested that your departure was due to a breach of company loyalty." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, though I felt a small, familiar flare of anger at Victoria's audacious spin. Of course, Victoria would try to retain their biggest client herself, attempting to salvage what she perceived as a crisis of her own making. "What she doesn't know," David continued, leaning forward slightly, his voice dropping, "is that we were already concerned about our relationship with Harbor Point." This surprised me, genuinely. "Concerned?" I echoed, unable to hide my surprise. The latest campaign results exceeded projections by 23%. Our market share increased by 5%. "The results were excellent, Addison," he agreed readily, his gaze unwavering. "And entirely because of your exceptional work. But we've noticed a troubling pattern of changes at Harbor Point over the past year. Delayed responses from other team members, quality issues with anyone except you, and frankly, a growing sense that they were taking our business for granted. It felt as though our account was only getting the attention it deserved when you were personally involved." He set down his coffee mug with a soft clink and leaned further forward, his eyes earnest. "3 months ago, our board of directors began to suggest we explore other marketing partners. I resisted, Addison. I resisted specifically because of our established relationship with you. You've consistently demonstrated an understanding of our brand, our long-term goals, and our precise business needs that goes far beyond the typical client-agency relationship. You became an extension of our internal team. My mind raced, connecting the dots. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place with astonishing speed. So, when you reached out about potential opportunities here at North Bay, David continued, his voice calm and deliberate. It felt like perfect timing, almost providential. But I need to be absolutely clear about something. We were never planning to poach you, Addison. We respect professional boundaries far too much for that. We fully understood you were prepared to wait until you had given proper notice at Harbor Point. I was planning to give 2 weeks' notice, I confirmed, feeling it was crucial he understood my ethical stance. Once I had a firm, signed offer, David smiled, a genuine, reassuring smile. I believe you, Addison. Your integrity and professionalism are precisely two of the many reasons we're having this conversation today. Victoria's precipitous decision this morning simply accelerated our timeline. He then opened a folder on his desk and slid a single document across the polished surface towards me. This isn't an interview, Addison. It's a job offer. My eyes scanned the header. Addison Walker, offer of employment. Below it, the title. Director of Client Strategy. My breath caught in my throat when I saw the salary figure. It was nearly double what I'd been making at Harbor Point. More than I would have even dared to ask for in my most recent, and summarily denied, raise request. A wave of disbelief, then profound gratitude washed over me. This is very generous, I managed, my voice slightly hoarse with emotion. It's market rate for someone with your experience, your proven results, and your unique understanding of what drives success in our industry. David corrected gently, his eyes conveying a quiet understanding. Sometimes, Addison, it takes leaving a situation to truly realize what you're worth. A success. The offer letter sat on my kitchen table that evening. A tangible testament to a new beginning, signed and ready to be returned tomorrow morning. I had asked David for the night to review everything. A professional courtesy I extended even when the answer seemed undeniably obvious. Still, taking time to consider major decisions, regardless of how clearly beneficial they appeared, was a habit I cultivated, a mark of the professionalism I prided myself on. My phone had been buzzing almost incessantly all afternoon with texts from my former colleagues at Harbor Point. Word of my abrupt firing had spread through the office like wildfire, immediately followed by excited, speculative rumors about my urgent meeting at North Bay. I'd responded to a few close co-workers, offering brief, noncommittal replies, but I deliberately avoided getting drawn into the swirling vortex of office gossip and recrimination. A new text from Thomas, Harbor Point's IT specialist, came through. Victoria called an emergency all. Hands meeting right after you left. It read. She told everyone you were terminated for breach of company loyalty, and that we should all remember that Harbor Point rewards loyalty above all else. The irony wasn't lost on anybody. Most people just exchanged knowing glances. I shook my head, a wry smile touching my lips. Victoria was attempting to make an example of me, to send a chilling message to anyone else considering their options. But from Thomas's message, it seemed her heavy-handed approach might be backfiring, alienating the very people she was trying to control. Another text arrived moments later, this one from Jessica, our seemingly timid but surprisingly astute receptionist. She's been locked in her office making furious calls all afternoon. The message read, followed by a series of wide-eyed emojis. Looks incredibly stressed. Guess someone's worried about North Bay. I didn't respond to Jessica. There was no satisfaction, no vindictive pleasure in Victoria's distress. Only a renewed, rock-solid certainty that I had made the right decision to discreetly look elsewhere. a company culture that loudly proclaimed its value of loyalty, but offered nothing in return: no investment, no fair compensation, no recognition of intrinsic worth. Wasn't one I wanted to be a part of anymore. My time and talent were too valuable to be squandered in such an environment. My phone rang again, an unknown number. Curious, and feeling an unexpected surge of confidence, I answered. Addison Walker, I stated, my voice clear and poised. Ms. Walker. This is Elaine Winters. A crisp, authoritative woman's voice inquired. I'm on the board of directors at Harbor Point Communications. My stomach tightened. Board members rarely, if ever, involve themselves directly with individual employee matters, certainly not those below the executive level. This was significant. I understand there was an incident today regarding your employment status, she continued, her tone formal but not unkind. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning to discuss it. We believe Victoria may have been somewhat hasty in her decision. So that was it. The pieces clicked into place. Victoria had fired her most valuable, revenue-generating account manager without official board approval. And now North Bay, the company's largest client, was potentially poised to walk. This was damage control, pure and simple, a desperate attempt to staunch the bleeding before it became a full-blown hemorrhage. I appreciate the call, Ms. Winters, I said, keeping my tone respectful but firm, not allowing an ounce of triumph to leak into my voice. However, I've already accepted another position. A distinct pause stretched on the line, long and pregnant with unspoken implications. May I ask where? Elaine inquired, her voice betraying a hint of urgency now. I don't think that would be appropriate to share at this time. I replied smoothly, maintaining professional boundaries. Another, even longer pause. I could almost hear her processing the implications. Ms. Walker. She pressed, her voice shifting to a more persuasive tone. If this is about compensation, I'm sure we can revisit those conversations. The board truly values your exceptional contribution to Harbor Point. The irony was almost painful. A bitter pill to swallow. 3 years of meticulously documented, repeatedly rejected requests for appropriate compensation. And now, suddenly, the board valued my contribution. Only when faced with the tangible threat of losing their most lucrative client did my value suddenly become apparent. It's not just about compensation, Ms. Winters, I replied honestly, choosing to be direct rather than spiteful. It's about respect. It's about recognizing employee worth and investing in their future before they have one foot out the door. It's about a culture that genuinely supports its talent, not just exploits it. Perhaps we should discuss this in person. She pressed again, undeterred. Tomorrow morning, say 9 a.m. at our offices. I thought about it for a moment. While I had absolutely no intention of returning to Harbor Point, there was something to be said for professional closure. A chance to articulate, directly to the board, what had gone fundamentally wrong, not just for my own sense of vindication, but as candid feedback that might, just might, benefit those dedicated colleagues who remained. I can meet at 9 a.m. I agreed, my decision made. But to be clear, Ms. Winters, I have signed an employment contract elsewhere. I am not coming to negotiate a return to Harbor Point. My purpose is purely to offer perspective. Understood, Elaine said, though her tone suggested she didn't entirely believe me, still clinging to the hope of a reprieve. I'll see you tomorrow at our offices. After hanging up, I walked over to my apartment balcony, poured myself a glass of wine, and stepped out into the cool, pleasant spring evening. The city lights began to twinkle below as dusk settled, a serene backdrop to the tumultuous day. Tomorrow would bring a conversation I hadn't anticipated having, but perhaps it was necessary. A final act of professionalism, a quiet reclaiming of my narrative. My phone buzzed with an email notification from David Klein, the subject line simply stating, "Welcome to the team." Whatever happened tomorrow, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't looking back. My path lay firmly forward. The Harbor Point reception area felt profoundly strange to enter as a visitor. The familiar scent of industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee hung in the air, a memory in itself. Jessica's eyes widened when she saw me, her professional smile faltering, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief, then genuine warmth. "Addison," she whispered, her voice barely audible. You're here for the meeting with Ms. Winters." "That's right, Jessica," I confirmed, offering a small, reassuring smile. Signing the visitor log, my own name printed boldly on the page, felt like yet another surreal moment in a day full of them. "I'll let her know you've arrived," Jessica said, her gaze sympathetic, then lowered her voice to a hushed conspiratorial tone. "For what it's worth, Addison, everyone's talking about how wrong this was. You were the best of us." Her words, simple and heartfelt, warmed me, a quiet affirmation that transcended the corporate machinations. "Thank you, Jessica," I replied, a genuine smile now gracing my lips. The elevator ride to the executive floor conference room gave me a precious moment to center myself. I had dressed meticulously, choosing a sharp navy suit that conveyed quiet authority, not to impress, but to remind myself, and anyone else in the room, that I was approaching this meeting as an equal, a professional with valuable insight, not as a dismissed employee seeking redemption or begging for reinstatement. Elaine Winters was already waiting when I arrived, seated at the long, polished conference table, a slim, leather-bound folder open in front of her. In her early 60s, with impeccably coiffed silver hair cut in a precise bob, she possessed the poised confidence of someone accustomed to making million-dollar decisions before breakfast. "Ms. Walker, thank you for coming," she said, rising from her chair to extend her hand, her grip firm and surprisingly strong. "Please, have a seat." I had half expected Victoria to join us, to participate in this final, humiliating act of damage control. But as Elaine closed the heavy conference room door, it became clear this would be a private conversation, a direct dialogue between the board and me. "I've reviewed your personnel file, Ms. Walker," Elaine began, opening the folder, her gaze scanning the contents. 6 years of consistently excellent performance reviews, documented consistent growth in your account portfolio, a significant increase in client revenue contribution, and, she paused, her finger tracing a line on the page, 3 formal requests for salary adjustment, all of which were denied. She looked up at me, her expression unreadable, but her eyes held a hint of genuine inquiry. I was not aware of this pattern. This surprised me. I assumed compensation decisions, especially for top performers, were reviewed at the board level, or at least with board oversight. Major compensation changes, yes, Elaine confirmed, but management has discretion within certain parameters. Discretion, she repeated, her tone subtly implying disapproval. That appears to have been exercised with significant autonomy in your case. Victoria has been operating with considerable independence, perhaps too much in recent years. "I see," I murmured, the understatement hanging in the air. "What I also don't see," she continued, her gaze direct, "is any documentation justifying your termination yesterday. There's no company policy prohibiting employees from interviewing with other organizations on their personal time, provided it doesn't interfere with their duties, and certainly not without a formal offer in hand." The word used was disloyal, I supplied, keeping my response measured matter of fact. Elaine's eyebrow arched slightly, a flicker of something akin to amusement, or perhaps exasperation crossing her features. An interesting choice of words, Ms. Walker, given the circumstances of the past 3 years. And a rather subjective claim to base a termination on, I might add. She then closed the folder with a soft snap, signifying a shift in the conversation. "Ms. Walker, I'll be direct. The board of directors would like to offer you reinstatement with Harbor Point Communications. We are prepared to adjust your compensation to the figure you requested in your last review, plus an additional 10% increase. And we'd like to offer you the title of Senior Account Director, effective immediately. The offer was undeniably generous, far better than anything Victoria had ever been willing to consider, even in my wildest dreams of a raise. It was the recognition I had fought for tirelessly for years. But it came 3 years too late, and one humiliating, public dismissal too late. That is a very generous offer, Miss Winters. I acknowledged, my voice calm, unwavering. But as I mentioned on the phone yesterday, I've already accepted a position elsewhere. At North Bay Solutions. Elaine stated, not asking, her gaze sharp, assessing my reaction. I didn't confirm or deny, maintaining my professional boundaries, refusing to be drawn into a gossip exchange. My new role begins on Monday, I simply stated. Elaine studied me for a moment, her expression thoughtful, perhaps even resigned. Victoria is concerned that North Bay may reconsider their relationship with Harbor Point given your departure. She admitted, her voice betraying the true, underlying reason for this meeting. It wasn't about me or how I'd been treated. It was about fear of losing their largest, most lucrative client. The validation, however painful, was complete. That would be a question for North Bay, Ms. Winters. I replied carefully, gracefully deflecting. Elaine nodded, seemingly appreciating my discretion and professionalism in a moment where I could have easily thrown Harbor Point under the bus. One last question, if I may, Ms. Walker. A candid one. What could Harbor Point have done differently to retain you? What would have made you stay? The question was unexpected, but profoundly welcome. It was the moment I had unknowingly prepared for, a chance to distill years of frustration and insight into a concise, impactful statement. I took a moment to consider my response, choosing my words carefully. Recognize my value before I had to look elsewhere to find it, I said simply, directly. Loyalty works both ways, Ms. Winters. Harbor Point expected unwavering commitment, tireless dedication, and consistent performance from me, while repeatedly demonstrating, through its actions and its compensation policies, that I wasn't worth investing in. That creates an unsustainable imbalance. Eventually, any loyal employee who feels undervalued will seek an environment where their contributions are truly appreciated, not just taken for granted. Elaine nodded slowly, thoughtfully, absorbing my words. A fair assessment, Ms. Walker, she conceded, her voice holding a new note of understanding. She then stood, extending her hand across the table, her expression respectful. Thank you for your candor. Whatever your next steps, I truly wish you success. Coming out of Harbor Point for the second and final time. Walking past Jessica's subtly approving nod, I felt lighter than I had in years. This meeting hadn't been about giving me a second chance. It had been about giving me a profound opportunity to reclaim my narrative, to leave on my own terms, with my dignity and professional reputation not just intact, but burnished. I had been granted an unexpected gift closure. The past was definitively behind me, and the future was wide open. Monday morning arrived with a thrilling mixture of excitement and a nervous flutter of anticipation. My new position as Director of Client Strategy at North Bay Solutions officially began today, and with it, a fresh, exhilarating chapter in my professional life. I arrived early, eager to settle into my new office, a real office, with a solid door that closed, and expansive windows that looked out over the city, a stark contrast to the cramped, windowless cubicle I had occupied at Harbor Point, despite my senior role. David had arranged for everything to be ready. From a thoughtful welcome basket filled with local treats, to a seamlessly integrated technology setup, every detail spoke of an organization that truly valued its people. At precisely 9 a.m., David stopped by my office, a warm smile on his face. Ready to meet the team? He asked. He then led me to a bright, collaborative workspace where 5 talented marketing specialists were gathered. These were the individuals who would be working under my direction, managing all of North Bay's various external marketing partnerships and agency relationships. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had gone from managing a single, albeit crucial, account at Harbor Point to overseeing all of North Bay's strategic marketing partnerships, including, soon enough, whoever would now be handling the Harbor Point relationship. Team, this is Addison Walker, our new Director of Client Strategy, David announced, his voice resonating with pride. Many of you already know her from her exceptional work at Harbor Point Communications. We are incredibly fortunate to have her expertise in-house now, leading our strategic efforts. After introductions and a brief team meeting to outline immediate priorities and upcoming projects, David asked me to join him in the executive conference room. There, I found several key members of North Bay's executive team, already gathered around the large table. The Chief Financial Officer, the Chief Marketing Officer, and the Head of Business Development. Before you dive in completely, Addison, David explained, gesturing to the assembled executives, we wanted your input on an important decision. The company's Chief Financial Officer spoke up, his expression serious. In light of recent changes, and after a thorough internal review, we're reevaluating our relationship with Harbor Point Communications. Their current contract is up for renewal next month. We value your perspective immensely, Addison, added the Chief Marketing Officer, his gaze direct. You understand our needs intimately, and you have first-hand, current knowledge of Harbor Point's capabilities, or perhaps their current limitations. The opportunity was right in front of me, laid out on a silver platter. I could have easily recommended terminating the relationship, dealing a swift, decisive, and deeply satisfying financial blow to Victoria and Harbor Point. No one would have questioned it. These kinds of agency relationships ended all the time, often with far less justification. It would have been the perfect, immediate revenge. But that wasn't who I was. Revenge, however sweet and momentarily gratifying, was fleeting. Professionalism, integrity, and a focus on long-term value would serve me infinitely better in the long run, defining my new path and my new identity. I think we should evaluate Harbor Point on the same objective criteria as any other potential partner. I said carefully, choosing my words with precision. Their past work, particularly on our key campaigns, has been strong, driven by individual talent. However, consistency in account management and reliability across their team will be critical factors to consider moving forward. We need to ensure that their entire offering aligns with our evolving brand strategy and digital requirements. I presented the facts, the objective data, leaving the emotional aspect completely out of the equation. The email was sent at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, precisely 1 week after Victoria had fired me from Harbor Point. I hadn't orchestrated the timing. It was simply when North Bay's executive team finalized their decision after reviewing proposals from 3 competing agencies, including Harbor Point's renewal offer. David had given me the courtesy of seeing the email before it went out, though I had recused myself from the final decision-making process to avoid any appearance of bias or impropriety. The message, drafted with David's customary precision, was professional and direct. Subject: important update regarding our marketing partnership. Dear Harbor Point Communications team, after careful consideration of our evolving marketing needs moving forward, North Bay Solutions has decided to transition our account to Meridian Creative, effective immediately. This decision reflects our evolving brand strategy and expanded digital requirements, which we believe Meridian Creative is uniquely positioned to support. Addison Walker, our new Director of Client Strategy, will oversee the transition process and will serve as your primary point of contact for all related matters. We appreciate our partnership over the past 6 years and request that all relevant materials, assets, and historical data be transferred by end of business Friday. Sincerely, David Klein, CEO, North Bay Solutions. I imagined Victoria's reaction upon receiving the news, the initial confusion, then the dawning shock, followed by the crushing realization of what had truly happened. Not only had she lost me, her top talent, but now she had lost North Bay, a client representing nearly 30% of Harbor Point's annual revenue. And to add exquisite professional irony to the situation, I would be the one managing the entire, inevitable transition. The perfect professional revenge had fallen directly into my lap, entirely unsolicited, without my having to lift a finger to orchestrate it. I hadn't needed to badmouth Harbor Point. I hadn't needed to sabotage their relationship. The company's own inherent shortcomings, magnified and illuminated by my departure, had done all the work for me. That afternoon, I received a LinkedIn request from Jessica, Harbor Point's receptionist, quickly followed by a private message. "The office is absolute chaos," it read. "Victoria's been in emergency meetings all day. 3 other account managers have updated their resumes today alone. Karma works fast." I didn't reply immediately. There was no need to gloat, no desire to insert myself further into Harbor Point's internal affairs. Instead, I focused my energy on building my new team, establishing robust processes, and strategizing for North Bay's ambitious future. Success, after all, was truly the best, most elegant revenge. Later, however, I did accept Jessica's connection request, accompanying it with a simple, heartfelt message. "Thank you for your kindness during my time at Harbor Point. Wishing you all the very best in your career." Taking the high road felt surprisingly good, a quiet victory in itself. My new position at North Bay brought with it challenges and opportunities I would never have experienced had I remained at Harbor Point, waiting indefinitely for recognition that might never have come. I was leading a dynamic team, shaping strategic partnerships, and innovating on a scale that had been unthinkable in my previous role. Sometimes I realized the best revenge isn't something you actively pursue or plot. It's the natural, inevitable consequence of valuing yourself when others don't, of having the courage to walk away and build something better. Looking back on that tumultuous journey a year later, from the vantage point of my corner office at North Bay Solutions, I understood that Victoria, in her misguided attempt to punish me, had inadvertently given me a precious gift. She had provided the decisive push I needed to finally find my true worth, to step into a role that truly matched my capabilities and ambitions. In seeking to avenge a perceived slight, I had found something infinitely more valuable: self-respect, profound professional satisfaction, and the courage to claim the success I unequivocally deserved. The cardboard box was long gone, but the lessons it represented were etched into my professional soul.